Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the super disturbing trend, which is widespread now. In fact, it's the new way of doing business in legal proceedings and in courtrooms, where the prosecuting party withholds deliberately and willfully and with premeditation, if not connivance with other parties, withholds critical evidence, which is called exculpatory evidence, which means evidence that says the other guy didn't actually do it, or is evidence that proves they weren't there or didn't do it or couldn't have done it or whatever. So this evidence is critical and key, and yet it's deliberately withheld. So in the effort or in the attempt to get a conviction of someone who is innocent. So to convict someone who is completely and totally innocent, key evidence is withheld, and it's done for ideological reasons or political ideological reasons. And I just want to talk about the number of cases there. What got me sort of thinking about this, it's something that's never been really far from my mind, but what got me thinking about this was a case where quite a prominent sports person had been accused of violent abuse, sexual abuse, beating up a girl and so on, and this had cost him dearly in terms of career and just his image and so on, and yet there was text and video evidence that proved conclusively, beyond any doubt at all, that he was not guilty of what he was being accused of. And yet the attorney in that had that evidence, and other legal professionals who had that evidence, that would have completely exonerated and cleared this person of all charges and proved that the accusations against him were utter and total fabrications. That key and critical evidence was withheld, now the guy ended up not being prosecuted, but the law enforcement authorities and all the other people involved, they didn't insist that evidence was. They just didn't pursue the case, but didn't insist that the evidence was made available to this guy's attorneys. So now, in the aftermath of this, no one's been cited, as I understand it. No one's been cited for conspiracy to withhold evidence, to conceal evidence, even though they have what are called disclosure orders, where you got to say, well, you want to prosecute my client, what evidence do you have? That type of thing, and you have to show all the evidence. That's a requirement. But instead, the evidence that exonerates or accuses, and or both. But in this case, as again I understand it, the evidence was withheld in what was an extreme act of legal treachery, in my view, and yet no one's been held accountable. No one's been disbarred. No one's been struck off from practicing law. No one who was privy to that information has been held accountable. So it's really they got off scot-free. They just didn't get away with it this time, but they've suffered no penalty at all, and they just walk away. Didn't work out this time. We'll get someone else next time. Now, as long as these people can walk away absolutely scot-free from this willful conspiracy to commit legal malpractice, withholding evidence, then they're going to do it again, because why wouldn't they? They just didn't get away with it this time, but maybe they'll be a bit more careful next time. Maybe they slipped up just slightly, but they won't make that mistake again. And the next person they target, they're able to screw him over sort of good and proper. So now I've also noticed this reliance on withholding evidence to get a prosecution, and conspiracy to withhold it, so that many of the parties involved, they all know that the information is being withheld and concealed, in fact, and yet they suffer no penalty either. And the court verdicts based on the exculpatory evidence not being available, those verdicts are standing. They're not being immediately brought back into court. Hey, this evidence wasn't right, or we didn't have this evidence at the time. Now we do. This person's got to be let out of prison, or they've got to be, the verdict against them has to be overturned, and so on. We're not seeing that. And January 6th is a classic case where the evidence that proves that people either weren't there or all they did was come in and take a few pictures and walk out again, these sorts of things. That evidence, that videotape evidence, wasn't made available. In fact, it was concealed, even though that the people screaming for prosecution, they knew that evidence would get people proved that there was no insurrection or anything of the sort, yet they concealed it. Now, there's numerous other cases, and I'm noticing it more and more, and it's now just de rigueur. It's just how things are done. Hey, I want to fucking put that white boy in prison. The damn straight white. I want to put him in prison, and I want to accuse him of this or that or the next thing. But I've got evidence that proves that he didn't do it, that he was nowhere near them, or and he wasn't. There was no. He had no involvement at all. I've got evidence of that. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to withhold it, and the clerk of courts or the judge and the prosecutors, the DA, and all these people, they're going to be on side with me. Won't be a problem at all. The cops, the whole thing. We'll just say pretend we don't have that evidence. We'll deliberately withhold it, conspiring with many other parties to do so. So we can put that damn white motherfucking Nazi in prison. But he didn't do anything. He committed no crime. Who gives a fuck? We'll just conceal the evidence that proves his innocence, and then we can make the charges stick. We've got an activist judge anyway that's going to look the other way on these things. We got him. And this is very much how it's done. Now, I just want to go to a case where there's some college kids were accused of raping and beating up a black dancer who was going to do some sort of dancing or stripping or something for some college sports team. And she claimed that she'd been beaten and raped and and went to the police with it, and the district attorney and the prosecutors decided to swarm all over it. But they had video evidence of the woman accusing the guy, all white guys by the way, accusing the white boys of beating her up and raping her. She had video. There was video evidence that she didn't have a mark on her, or that she had some marks on her when she arrived, but had no additional marks. Apparently, her own boyfriend they'd had a fight over drugs or something like that. But her black boyfriend, she had a fight. But it proved conclusively that these guys were not guilty. There was no DNA evidence. Now when they tested for DNA evidence and found nothing on there, they simply threw that evidence out. So no, forget it. It doesn't help our case. It doesn't help us in persecuting these straight white boys. And ideologically, we want to persecute these straight white boys. They're all Nazis, Hitler. And so we want scalps. We want fucking scalps to feed to the media, because we're surrounded by Nazis. White fascist Nazis are everywhere. We have to have some prosecution. We have to feed up those heads on a plate to the. So we'll just hide the evidence. Any evidence that exists that doesn't suit what we want to do, ideologically we want to do this. If any evidence doesn't suit, we'll just conceal it. We're allowed to do that because we're fighting Hitler. And when we're fighting Hitler, we can do whatever we want. So we'll just conceal evidence. We'll fabricate evidence. We'll hide evidence. Do whatever we have to do. Because the supply of Nazis is zero, and the demand for Nazis is huge. So what are you got to do? I mean, shit, we got to do this. And so this concealing of evidence. Now, that guy did get struck off the record. Struck off, disbarred. But immediately his wife or lady partner was given a very well-paying job instantly. The minute he lost his gig, she got a fantastically well-paid gig. So he's been very well looked after by the establishment. Really, he's suffering no penalty for what he's done. And the other people who were involved in it, who were his co-conspirators, who connived with him to withhold the evidence, they haven't really suffered. One got a minor demotion and, this sort of thing. So no one really. Now, all of them should have been dragged into court and charged with conspiracy to commit perjury to put innocent young white men in prison. But the attitude wasn't, no, we don't have to punish them. Look, they tried to ideologically do the right thing. Ideologically, Nazis everywhere. You've got to get the so ideologically, they were kind of doing what we wanted. This is what the globalist machine wanted, but so they didn't get away with it. Maybe they were just a little bit too keen, but otherwise, hey, they were doing what we want them to do. They just didn't get away with it this time. Minor slap on the wrist. That's it. And we'll look after them because they did put a big effort in to support that globalist ideology of getting all those Nazi Hitlers. So there's no real penalty for these people. They're able to do it time and time and time again. Now coming to the way they're chasing after Trump at the moment, very obvious sort of big state lawfare thing going on. Again, key evidence is, in my view at least, key evidence is being either ignored or withheld. Evidence that would prove that Trump didn't do any of the things that they're claiming. But they're doing everything they can to invent it. And again, in order to make the shit stick, it's okay if we withhold evidence. It's okay if we fabricate evidence. It's okay if we deny the facts. And as long as they've got activist prosecutors, activist DAs, activist judges, activist court administration officials, as long as all these people are activists, they can just about get the media, they can just about get away with it. And if they do get caught out and really not defeated, but sort of their attempt has been stopped, they suffer no penalty for this. Now, there was a time when if you committed perjury in a court, particularly if the situation was someone could go to prison, if you committed perjury in a court or withheld evidence, the legal system would really come after you, and there wouldn't, excuses weren't. No, we're not taking any excuses here, buddy. You're going to fucking prison for that. Whereas today they're pretty much applauded as stunning and brave social justice warriors. Yeah, I fabricated evidence, I withheld other evidence, and I cheated the system, and I engaged in endless malpractice. Oh, applause, applause, applause. You stunning and brave social justice warrior fighting the Nazis. And so it's pretty much applauded now. And that's how far we've slipped down the slippery slope, and how far our legal system has been corrupted and debauched by the globalists, because this is their doing. Make no mistake. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.